بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So last off we left off with the Badal Wahi, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to go to Qādī Iyyaḍ. You guys remember the story? Or, I'm sorry if all of you are familiar with the story. And the descent of Eid, we also talked about in Nuzul Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. The last hadith we did was Hadith Badal Wahi, Hadith Aisha, bab number 72 or 73, depending on the print. So Hadith 160a. So before we begin the discussion, what I wanted to touch on is basically you have Imām Muslim, he has Badal Wahi. Before that, he talks about the time on which Shahada is not accepted. Before that, he talks about the Ta'ifa al-Mansur, right? The Ta'ifa that will always be upon the haqq, or the group that will always be upon the truth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continuously give them victory. Before that, he talked about Nuzul Isa. Before that, he talks about other signs of the hour. He talks about the other Anbiya. What is Imam Muslim preparing or setting us up for? What is the reasoning behind this ordering of these ahadith? Why did he put them in this way? So he talked about, go ahead.
That the beginning of the prophethood, Prophet Muhammad indication of the end of times.
Okay, excellent, right? So the coming of the Prophet ﷺ is actually, and why is that? Because he's the last prophet. Good. And all the other hadith that he mentions before this. So that's definitely a part of it. Excellent. He talks about some of the other, he talks about, he opens the book, right, talking about Iman, talking about belief, talking about the branches of Iman. And then he, rahimahullah, he goes on and he continues, he starts talking about what expels an individual from the fold of Islam. Then he, rahimahullah, he brings a set of hadith that talk about the end of times. And now he started talking about comparing to other the prophets. You guys remember the hadith of Ibrahim, Lut, and Yusuf alayhi salam. He spoke about that. And then he started talking about when the Shahada will actually not be accepted. So not just the signs of times, but like the complete end of times. And then now he's talking about the beginning of Revelation. So this is a big part of it. Why else? Why else mention some of those other things? Like what is part of the logic or part of the reason that Imam Muslim brings that hadith in this set or this order? Part of the reason, and Allah knows best, is go ahead.
I was just going to say, like the first thought that came to my head is like having the right aqidah, having the right belief.
Absolutely, right? So having the right understanding, because if I don't understand all of these different branches of faith, there's no way for me to completely understand Islam. And not just that, is these ahadith that Imam Muslim brings, does it talk a lot, are they more of a mentioning of the different parts of Iman, or is there a very detailed discussion of them? It's not very detailed. Why is that?
I'll talk about it later.
I'm sorry?
We'll talk about it later in detail.
He might or he might not. But we can get into that. But up until this point, until where we are.
These are the most important components.
These are the most important components, right? If like even up until this point and where we are in the book, if a person just walked away with this, that would be enough for them, right? They'd be in actually a very good spot. They'd be, in terms of understanding what the deen is, and like, okay, well, these are the pillars of Islam, these are the pillars of Iman. Okay, understanding that there are signs for the day of judgment, etc., and understanding the finality of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, part of the reason that he mentions the previous ummah, he mentions Isa alayhi salam, he mentions the other prophets, is to show the position of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he is not just the last Nabi, but he's also I'm sorry? Culmination. Okay, that's one way of expressing it. The greatest, no doubt, right? The greatest. If his nation is the greatest nation, automatically that makes him what? The best leader of that nation. So part of the setup here that Imam Muslim does in bringing these sets of ahadith and getting us to this point in the beginning of Revelation is number one, like you had mentioned, that all right, from the signs of the hour is the coming of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him at the end, he's clearly the best. And there are going to be more hadith when we get to Isra al-Miraj, which is one of the coming hadith, that gives us another refortification of his makana, of his status, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yes?
It makes sense also to have stories of other prophets to give context of what prophet it is, so that we can talk about
Sure. So I agree with what you're saying. The thing is, where do we find that?
the Quran.
In the Quran, right? We find that in the Quran. But in terms of how Imam Muslim organized his book, you don't have too much mention about the details of the lives of the other prophets. It's more so like, okay, Isa alayhi salam, even when he comes, he's not coming as a what? He's not coming as a Nabi. He's coming as a ruler. And what is he going to rule by? Shariat Muhammad. Yeah, he's going to rule by the Shariat Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So even previous prophets, they are mandated and obligated to follow the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Why? Because it is the final and greatest Sharia. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى وحدثني محمد بن رافع قال حدثنا عبد الرزاق قال أخبرنا معمر قال زهري وأخبرني عروة عن عائشة أنها قالت أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الوحي وساق الحديث بمثل حديث يونس. So over here it's similar, and we had talked about what is the relationship of Urwa to Aisha. He's nephew from Asma. Ahsant, good, right? So Asma actually has two sons that narrate on Aisha, and they used to spend a lot of time with her. Urwa was one. I think Hisham was the second. I'll have to double check. Yeah. So there are two sons of Asma that they used to spend a lot of time with Aisha, and one of them was Urwa ibn Zubair. The other one was, like I said, let me double check. I believe it was Hisham. And it's actually from them that we have narration. Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrates herself about her age of when she married the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So over here, he narrates that Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that when revelation first started with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is similar to the previous hadith. Right? It is similar to the previous hadith. غير أنه قال, except that Urwa mentions, فوالله لا يجزينك الله أبدا. Over here, except for where he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never abandon you. قالت خديجة, and he said that Khadija radiallahu anha, she said أي ابن عم. So over here, she's talking to her cousin Waraqa, اسمع من ابن أخيك, and listen to the son of your brother. قال وحدثني عبد الملك بن شعيب بن الليث قال حدثني أبي عن جدي قال حدثني عقيل بن خالد قال ابن شهاب سمعت عروة بن الزبير يقول قالت عائشة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فرجع إلى خديجة يرجف فؤاده. So over here, he صلى الله عليه وسلم, similar hadith, Aisha, she's just more. Some of these hadith will have deeper explanations and more insight and more information, and some of them will have less. And there's a couple reasons for that. Sometimes the narrator that narrates after the initial one, he will take sections and he will summarize and he will shorten. Some of them will narrate it as is, and some of them they will narrate in meaning. And all of these are permissible and completely reasonable ways to narrate hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So over here, he returned back to Khadija, again, and with his heart trembling. وَاقْتَصَ الْحَدِيث بِمِثْلِ حَدِيثِ يُونس وَمَعْمَرَ. And then the rest of the hadith is similar to the previous two hadith, right? Yunus being one of the bottlenecks in the hadith, and Ma'mar being another one. وَلَمْ يَذْكُرْ أَوَّلَ حَدِيثِهِمَا, except that the beginning of the hadith is not mentioned, like in this part that we had talked about. يعني فرجع إلى خديجة يرجف فؤاده, except that his heart was shaking. من قوله أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. In this part of the hadith, يعني when revelation first started, من الوحي رؤيا الصادقة. So over here, Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentions in the first hadith that we had spoken about, that revelation didn't start with him going to the cave. How did revelation start? So if you go back to the first hadith, that was a long time ago. But over here, she says, كان أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الوحي الرؤيا الصادقة في النوم. Dreams, right? That the first, when revelation first started, how? Not in Qādī Iyyaḍ, but in truthful dreams. Meaning, over here, had revelation started? So when she says that he saw truthful dreams, does that mean revelation started? So revelation not in the sense of Quran, right? Because the first Quran that was revealed was what? اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, right? This is agreed upon. So الرؤيا الصادقة, what did she mean by that? A truthful dream. What does a truthful dream mean? And when we think of truthful dreams, what do we usually think of, or what do we associate with that? I'm sorry? Okay, Ibrahim alayhi salam. What is it that he saw?
He saw messages from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
He saw signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jayyid, good. What else? When we have truthful dreams, what are some of the things that we see? Maybe something that might happen. Now over here, if he sallallahu alayhi wasallam had a series of dreams in which he saw things that were happening or were to happen to him, because for us, we might see them sometimes. But if they're happening one after another, and every time he has a dream, this is in preparation for him to say, okay, something special is about to happen. Why? Because having a dream in series, truthful dreams in series like that, is that normal? No. So this was part of his sallallahu alaihi wasallam revelation, and it was one of the reasons that actually pushed him to do what? So he started having these dreams. What did he start doing then?
Go to cave.
Then he went to Qādī Iyyaḍ. He was like, okay, I need time to figure this out. I need to figure out what exactly is going on. Let me go. And what did he do in that cave? كان يتحنث, right? Yeah, right. He used to worship. Right? He used to go to that cave and worship. And why did he choose Qādī Iyyaḍ? You guys remember? Right, it was secluded. Good. What else? What is special about Qādī Iyyaḍ? I know some of you might have been there before.
Jabal Nur, the light.
Oh, they called it Jabal Nur after. It wasn't called before Revelation, and they called it Jabal Nur after Revelation because that's where Revelation first came down. What else? I'm sorry. Right, not just Mecca. What did it overlook specifically? It overlooked the Kaaba. I sense it. Because now the Kaaba, obviously there's a structure around it. Was there always a structure around the Kaaba? No. Right. The structure was it's a relatively new construction. I think the Ottomans might have been the first one to actually put fixed walls and construction around the Kaaba. For those of you that have made Umrah, they still have older looking brownish sections that have the names of the companion, the Khulafa Rashidin in them. Anyway, for those of you that have gone, inshallah, if you haven't gone, when you go, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and allow you a visit. But basically, they're these arches. Some of you might have seen it in the pictures. I was about to say golden arches, right? Yeah. Huh? Yeah, so it's a brownish, the brownish gold colored, and there's the arch. It's not, and it's almost completely around the inner tawaf area. So that area was how the old walls used to look. It was smaller than it is now because they had extended some of the areas. But those were the original boundaries around the Kaaba, and in the middle area is where they used to make tawaf. So, saying that, there were no walls before, and because there were no walls, when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would actually be in the ghar, there was a gap in the rocks, and it was through that gap he was able to actually see the Kaaba. So he would be facing the Kaaba, and that's where he sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to worship. And one of the reasons he chose that place, because he could have gone on any mountain to seclude himself, right? So what made this? It was away from the people, and we said, why didn't he want to worship in the mataf or in the Kaaba at that time? I'm sorry. Well, the people might have been one reason. I think that's secondary though. But the idols, because the Othan, right? There were, how many idols were in the Kaaba?
300.
There were 360, right? One for every day. They had put all these idols. So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wanted to stay away from those idols. Even during the time of during the pagan era in Jahiliyyah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never worshipped idols, right? He never did. Who's another one who didn't worship idols? No, during that time. Abu Bakr, right? He's another one that never worshipped idols, radiallahu anhu. So he used to seclude himself. He went to the space. That's where he used to make ibadah. And it was then what happened? Revelation came. And then he like we know the rest of the story. He came back to the Prophet he came back to Khadija radiallahu anha. He asked her to wrap him because he was shaking, he was scared, he was terrified, understandably so. Right? You're like in the middle of nowhere. All of a sudden, this being comes and like squeezes you like in a way that you've never been squeezed before, asking you to read something you're completely unfamiliar with, and that is so out of character of how the Arabs used to speak. In the sense that it was far more eloquent than something he had ever heard before. So it was a frightening experience. And then what happened when he came back? So she wrapped him. He calmed down. They went to Waraqa. He told him, he's like, man, I wish I was with you when they kicked you out. So now he's had these series of dreams. He was up in this cave. He's worshiping. He's squeezed by this strange being asking him to read. And then he's going to this old man who's blind, by the way, and he tells him like, "Oh man, I wish I was with you when they came." And he just imagine like you're just getting this flood of all the strange information. How he must have felt. He's like, "What do you mean kick me out?" Like like for someone who not proud of the fact, but they know that they're relatively beloved by the people. Right? People trusted him, and they used to come to him to judge between them. They used to trust their things with him, and he's like, why would they? Why would they kick me out? Why would they remove me? I'm just minding my own business. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. واختصر الحديث بمثل حديث يونس ومعمر ولم يكن أول حديثه من قوله أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الوحي الرؤيا الصادقة. So over here, Yunus and Ma'mar, they leave out the beginning of this hadith. They don't mention that Aisha radiallahu anha's mention of when Revelation first started with truthful dreams. وتابع يونس على قوله فوالله. So Yunus, he adds into his narrations, I swear by Allah, لا يجزيك الله أبدا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never abandon you. وذكر قول خديجة, and he mentions Khadija's statement. Some of the narrators mention it, some of them don't. أي ابن عم, and this addition as well, oh the son of my paternal father, the son of my paternal uncle. That's what I'm trying to say. Huh? لا يخزيك. I'm sorry. جزاك الله خير. Yeah. Oh man. No. الله يبارك فيك يا أخي. جزاك الله خير. No. لا يخزيك with a خاء. أبدا. حاشا. أي ابن عم يعني the son of my paternal uncle. اسمع من ابن أخيك يعني listen to the son of your brother. قال حدثني أبو طاهر قال أخبرنا ابن وهب قال أخبرني يونس قال ابن شهاب قال أخبرني أبو سلمة ابن عبد الرحمن أن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري وكان من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يحدث. So over here, this is no longer a narration from Aisha, but a narration from Jabir. Jabir is an Ansari, meaning that could he have been present in the beginning of Revelation? Why? How do we know that? He's an Ansari, right? And the Ansar, they came to Islam when? So some of them, right? Yeah. So I would say a handful of them became Muslim before the Prophet ﷺ went and actually migrated to Medina, because they came and they heard from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and then they invited the Prophet ﷺ back to Medina, and it was after that they made a hijrah. وكان من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, that he was from the companions of the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, كان يحدث, from those that narrated from him. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, so he said that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, ويحدث عن فترة الوحي, that he was narrating about the time of revelation. قال في حديثه, and he says in his hadith, فبين أنا أمشي سمعت صوتا من السماء. So over here he is mentioning that the Prophet ﷺ saying that he was walking and all of a sudden he heard a sound from the sky. فرفعت رأسي, so I looked up, فإذا الملك الذي جاءني بحراء جالسا على كرسي بين السماء والأرض. And he said that when I looked up, I saw an angel sitting on a throne or sitting on a chair that filled the heaven and filled the sky. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, so the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, فجدت منه فرقا فرجعت فقلت زملوني فدثروني فأنزل الله تبارك وتعالى يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر وهي الأوثان قال ثم تتابع الوحي. So over here he's saying that when he looked up, he obviously was terrified, right? He saw this great being in the sky, and he went back to Khadija radiallahu anha and he told her to wrap them. And over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Ya ayyuhal mudaththir, oh you the one who is wrapped, qum fa'andir, yani get up and warn the people, wa rabbaka fakabbir, yani and praise your Lord, wa thiyabaka fatahhir, yani and purify your clothing, wa rijzu fahjur, and like the filth, stay away from it. And over here he says wahil awthan, the meaning is to stay away from the awthan, or stay away from the idols. قال ثم تتابع الوحي, he said, and then he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions here that after this point, after this time, then there was no break in the revelation, meaning it started coming regularly. So from Iqra until Ya ayyuhal mudaththir, there was a gap. Any questions until? Yes, go ahead.
What about the duha? Is it because the way that I guess based on what you're saying, I guess my understanding of it is wrong. Duha wa layli, that's a Yama wa Da'aka.
Yeah.
I thought that was because the wahi had stopped for a while. The Prophet thought he
So you have different mufassirin who will take these. The problem is, like, when it comes to asbab al-nuzul, or why certain verses or surahs were revealed, we don't have a complete picture of why all of them were. So what happens were that some of the companions, they would look at a situation and they would say that Allah revealed this regarding this, and it was appropriate, and let me give an example of that. Are there situations or mentions in the Quran that sometimes we feel apply to us? Like, it's almost like we feel Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to me, right? And it's the same thing here. So the companions, they would see certain things and they'd be like, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala definitely revealed it regarding the situation. Does it mean it was revealed at that moment? Or does it mean that it was revealed regarding this, right? Like, and it was appropriate to this. So there are a lot of things that we might see that, oh, if we look at the Quran and be like, oh yeah, this is definitely appropriate, or this would fit according to the situation. But it's not necessary that was the catalyst for revelation. It doesn't mean that it's not appropriate, because it can be. Like, the Quran is supposed to be before all times and all places. So if we understand it's the kulli zaman wa makan, then the application can be in multiple places, in multiple spaces, but that makes it that much more difficult in determining, okay, what was the specific catalyst for the revelation of this. An example of it is like they say, Qul Allahu ahad, why was it said this about, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that Allah is one? It says, okay, because the Quraysh, they came to the Prophet ﷺ, they said, Ansab Rabbak, they said, well, give us the lineage of your Lord. And it's appropriate, right? It works. Is it necessary specifically? No, not necessarily, unless you have very clear ahadith. The problem with the ahadith, asbab al-nuzul, or the reasons for revelation, they're not that many. Not just that, if you go into, inshallah, if we get to kitab and tafsir, you'll find a lot of this. Like, it'll be a lot of the companions being like, oh, this was revealed regarding that. And then you'll have like 3 or 4 different companions saying, oh, this was revealed. No, it was actually, they won't say no, but they'll be like, oh, this was revealed regarding that. And all 3 of them will mention like 3 different times. like three different events. And it's like, okay, well, what, so where, when was it exactly? In some are pretty clear. So some of them, they'll be like, for example, the verses of hijab were revealed the second year of hijrah. Right? There's no, there's no like, oh, well, did he mean that it's appropriate? No. Some of them are a little bit more clear than others. The Isra wal Miraj is very clear, right? So all of the verses, you can get timelines for certain verses because you're like, okay, no, we know for sure that they didn't start praying until here. Or we know for sure that the Qibla didn't change. Like, for example, the verse about تولي وجهك, right? شطر المسجد الحرام, like, to turn toward the Masjid al-Haram. That can't have happened. Yeah, like, it can't have happened, number one, before the prayer was obligated, and secondly, it couldn't have happened multiple times, right? It's not possible. The Prophet ﷺ was told time and again, to turn back to it. But could it be appropriate for different places that didn't get the news?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, yeah, it definitely works here. And then they're like, oh yeah, and when we were in Quba, the Prophet, a man came, and it's like, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, yeah, they might have been in different times in different places, even though the revelation was appropriate. But it was all within the same time span.
Got it. Thank you.
Now, any other questions? No. قال وحدثني عبد الملك بن شعيب ابن الليث قال حدثني أبي عن جدي قال حدثني عقيل بن خالد عن ابن شهاب سمعت أبا سلمة بن عبد الرحمن يقول أخبرني جابر بن عبد الله أنه سمع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول. So over here again, hadith Jabir, he mentions that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, ثم فطر الوحي عني فترة فبين أنا أمشي. So over here, he صلى الله عليه وسلم is just reinforcing what you guys already know, that there was a time where the wahi stopped. Right, so there was a gap in the wahi, and he said that I was walking. ثم ذكر مثل حديث يونس غير أنه قال. So he mentions similar to the previous hadith that we mentioned. فجثثت منه فرقا حتى هويت إلى الأرض. So he was like, I almost fell to the ground. I almost fell to the ground out of fear of what I had seen. قال وقال أبو سلمة والرجز أوثان. So over here, Abu Salama, he narrates and he does tafsir of the word rijz, saying that it means أوثان, that it means idols. قال ثم حمي الوحي بعد وتتابع. So over here, then the revelation continued regularly after that. Yeah.
Back on the notion of revelation continued quickly after that.
Yeah.
Does that necessarily mean the rest? I don't know. Does that
there are
necessarily
no
mean
gaps.
The rest of revelation? Okay, gotcha.
There are no long gaps, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's the gap was so long that what happened? The Prophet ﷺ, he's like something's wrong, right? But it came so regularly after that he saw the worry that he had actually disappeared. And how do we know that? Because the revelation after that, many times when we say revelation, what do we associate it with directly? With the Quran. Was everything revealed to him in the Quran? No. Right? So for him, it was enough that there were certain things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell him. And we know this because there are angels that would come and tell the Prophet some things. Yes. Like for example, hadith Jibreel. Right? That's part of revelation, where Jibreel is coming and he's asking questions. And how is it revelation? Because he told him, he's like, you've spoken correctly. Right? So there's revelation that was coming in different forms, and it was to the point where he sallallahu alaihi wasallam felt like he had regular contact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes it would be in the form of Quran, and sometimes it would be in other forms. Like for example, he said, how many verses in the Quran do we have about siwak, about the toothstick? We don't have any. But he says, Umirtu an astanna siwak. I've been ordered to use the siwak. Ordered by who? By Allah, right? So there were other types of revelation that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam had that were outside of the Quran, which is why the status of hadith is equivalent to revelation. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا يَنْتَقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. Right? He sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never speaks from his own desires. Everything that he would speak, in huwa illa wahyun yuha, right? Except that it was a revealed revelation. قال وحدثني محمد بن رافع قال حدثنا أبو الرزاق قال أخبرنا معمر عن الزهري بهذا الإسناد نحو حديث يونس قال فأنزل الله تبارك وتعالى يا أيها المدثر إلى قوله والرجز فاهجر. So over here he mentions the previous hadith saying that it is in line with what the previous narration saying for the narration of Yunus saying the first verse يا أيها المدثر to the end of the last part of this verse قبل أن تفرض الصلاة, and this all happened before the prayer was obligated. And he says, وَهِي الْأَوْثَانِ rijs over here, right? The filth is translated again, or the mufassiri, or the narrator, he says that the intention here are the idols. وَقَالَ فَجُثِثْتُ مِنْهُ كَمَا قَالَ أُقَيْلْ. So over here, and it worried me or scared me, and this is similar to the previous hadith. قال وحدثنا زهير بن حرب قال حدثنا عن الوليد بن مسلم قال حدثنا الأوزاعي سمعت يحيى يقول سألت أبا سلمة أي القرآن أنزل قبل. So over here there is a specific question that was asked that what was the first Quran to be revealed, or what Quran was revealed very early. قال يا أيها المدثر. So he responded saying that يا أيها المدثر was revealed before. فقلت أو اقرأ. He's like, or is it not اقرأ? فقال سألت جابر بن عبد الله. So he asked Jabir ibn Abdullah أي القرآن أنزل قبل. He said that what Quran was revealed before or first. قال يا أيها المدثر. And he responded the same thing, saying يا أيها المدثر. فقلت أو اقرأ. So he tried correcting him, saying what about اقرأ? قال جابر أحدثكم ما حدثنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He's like, I'm narrating to you what the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم narrated to me. قال جاورت بحراء شهرا فلما قضيت جواري نزلت فاستبطنت بطن الوادي فنوديت فنظرت أمامي وخلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي فلم أرى أحدا ثم نوديت. So over here he sallallahu alayhi wasallam is narrating, and this is Jabir radiallahu anhu narrating it. So he's like, I was in Hira for a month, meaning that he would only come down, he would eat, or he would bring he would take food back with him sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he was spending his entire time in worship. And he says that when I was done, when I finished, I came down into the valley. Right, I came down into the valley and I was walking, and then I heard a call. Then I heard a call from the heavens. So I looked in front of me, I looked behind me, I looked right, I looked left, and I didn't see anything. I didn't see anyone. And then he said I was called again, and then he said I didn't see anyone. ثُمَّ نُدِيتُ فَرَفَعْتُ رَأْسِي. He said, then finally I was called again and I looked up. Right, so he was looking around and he didn't see anyone, but he finally looked up. فَإِذَا هُوَ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ فِي الْهَوَاءِ. So he said that I saw this being sitting in the sky on a throne. يعني جبريل عليه السلام, and it was Jibreel عليه السلام. فأخذني رجفة شديدة. So I was extremely frightened. فأتيت خديجة فقلت, and he came to Khadija رضي الله عنها, دثروني, and he wrapped me فصبوا عليه الماء. So she poured some water on me. فأنزل الله عز وجل يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك طهر. So over here, after she did that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed يا أيها المدثر. قال وحدثنا محمد بن المثنى قال حدثنا عثمان بن عمر قال أخبرنا علي بن مبارك أن يحيى ابن أبي كثير بهذا الإسناد وقال فإذا هو جالس على العرش بين السماء والأرض. He said, and that he was sitting on a throne between the heavens and the earth. So all of these appearances by Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, were they pleasant for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? No, right? So the first time there was a squeeze, right? He squeezed him 3 times, and then the second time he appeared to him in the full form, filling up the sky. Why? Why? Because there are other hadith where Jibreel, he appeared in the form of a person, yes, and he came and he sat with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he has the ability to what?
Shapeshift.
Right. He has the ability to look like a human and come and engage with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So why didn't he do that in these 2 first revelations? Yes?
So the Prophet ﷺ would know that this is something out of this world.
Right, so he had to, right? He had to make a mark on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because had he come in the form of a human being, what would have happened?
No big deal.
It wouldn't really have been a big deal. It's like, how'd you know I was up here? You know what I mean? Like, right? That would be probably the first interaction. It's like I only tell my wife like that I'm up here. Like, how do you even know I'm here? And it would be more of a conversation. Over here, the Prophet ﷺ, the first time, was it a conversation? No, it was complete fear, right? It was complete fear. Then the fear went to self-doubt, right? Because there was a break in revelation. And then the next time he appeared, it was even greater than the first time that he saw him. And how do we know this like left a mark on the Messenger of Allah?
The fact that he went to Khadija.
Okay, absolutely, right? The fact that he went to Khadija and she had to like wrap him, and right, she did all that, and he looked to her for solace. What else?
The way he expresses it.
Right, the way he's expressing that, like he's the one who's sharing the story. So I said, do we have similar stories of like how revelation happens? Does he share those stories? No. The only time he shares is like when he was asked. They said, Ya Rasulullah, how does wahi come down to? And he said, sometimes it comes in this form, sometimes it comes in that form, sometimes I see this. But this is something he actually volunteered. This is something that that is the imprint, that the mark that it left on him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's why he felt the need to share it. And sometimes the effect of emotion, especially fear, and the mark that it leaves on us is something that it can be very motivating. Right? It can really push us to do things. It'll cause us to remember certain details, right? So if we ever think of a time where we're scared, sometimes we become very hyper aware of our surroundings and what's going on, versus if things are coming to us more casually. And even after the break in Revelation, how did he feel? Right? So he went from this extreme fear and worry, and then what happened when there was a break in Revelation? Like all of the dreams that he saw, and then this meeting with Jibreel, and then nothing. Right? Not just that, like it was almost like a depression. And he started doubting himself.
Like existential crisis.
Right? It's like, what is going on? Like what and then all of a sudden, what is the thing that broke him out of that? Like seeing the sky fill up with this being, like it's a completely abnormal experience. Just seeing this giant being sitting on a throne in the middle of the sky. And he goes to Khadija. Khadija, she's like, no, you're hallucinating. Right? Like if we went to one of our wives, right, that's probably
One of.
That'd probably be the first thing that we would hear, right? It's like, no, it's okay. You're just, you know, did you eat something you weren't supposed to eat, or did you have Jucini's chicken, or like what? Like, you know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah. Not the Jucini's chicken.
Like what happened? There's something you must have seen, or there must be something you ate or drank that you're seeing, you know, all of these hallucinations. She didn't doubt it. And I find that so amazing, that she, radiallahu anha, she had no doubt in him at all. And what did she do immediately? Right? She consoled him. She consoled him, she wrapped him, she poured some water on him. And why did she do that? Like that's not, is that a reaction that we normally have?
She saw him, like she saw him for real, like he was impacted. So.
Right, so she saw that like there's something wrong, right? Like he's impacted in this way, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And sometimes when we are in such an extreme state of fear, what will bring us out of that fear? Can we close that door? Sorry. I'm sorry?
Comfort.
So comfort, she did that, right? And she felt like, okay, this comfort is not working. So what did she do next?
Shocking him out of it.
Right, to shock him out of it. So that's why she poured the water on him, right? And it's not like, was water like a regular resource in Mecca? No. You know what's amazing? So when I lived in Mecca, we used to go to Taif sometimes. Taif is about like a 45-minute drive, an hour or so. And when we would get close to the foot of Taif, because Taif is on a mountain, they're like, yeah, this is, they have a checkpoint there. I forgot the name of the checkpoint, but inshallah I'll remember it. And I was like, okay, well, why do they call the checkpoint this? And they said, oh, this is where they bring the water. So the people of Mecca actually used to go here to the foot of the mountain of Taif to get water from the people of Taif, because there is such a shortage of water that's there. I had this I had this false conception that all of the pipes in Mecca had Zamzam.
That's what
I was like,
is that not true?
right. So when I first got there, I was like, yeah, doesn't just everybody drink Zamzam and shower in Zamzam and like,
Yes.
That's not the case. Like after my first throat ache, I found out that was not the case.
But back then, was that the case?
I'm sorry.
But back then, was that the case?
Back then, so they didn't. Zamzam wasn't used for agriculture, right? Zamzam wasn't used because the Zamzam it was in a well. So the Zamzam well, if you guys look at really old pictures, you can actually see the old well. Like what happened, the shift that happened when Al Saud took over and money started coming into Saudi is they built a pump, right? So we called it a well, but for those of you, I mean, most of you guys are young, but I went when they actually still, in 2001, it was either 2001 or 2002, I don't remember. Some of you probably aren't even born. So they you actually used to, in the Mataf area, there were stairs that went down. So you'd be able to go downstairs, next to the Kaaba. So if the Kaaba is here, the Zamzam well is right here. So this is the black stone on this side, and then over here you'd be able to go down, take the steps down. They had series of water fountains, and you can go up to the pump, right? And they called it the well. And they say, it doesn't matter how much you can only pump the water out at a certain speed because it also takes time for the well to fill back up. And historically, this is what happened. The Ottomans, what they did is that they had a structure that was built over the well, and they had a number of vessels that people could lower, and they could they would bring up and they would take the Zamzam out like that manually. It's just too tedious, right? It's too tedious to use that water for agriculture. And not just that. You guys know the other problem with Mecca? It's very mountainous. And what can you not do in mountains? Can't farm, right? Because it's all rock, right? It's all rock or hard clay. So, which is why Mecca is not very green, and which is why a lot of the companions had problems when they went to Medina, because Medina was green, right? And I know for those that went, you're like, that's not green. No, comparatively, it's very. Right? So when you compare rocks to actual earth when you could farm, it's a big difference. Even some of the date palm trees, things like that in Mecca, they're not in the central part of where people live. It's actually much further out. So they used to get water from Taif, right? So they actually had to go to the foot of Taif, and that's where they would bring in a lot of water. But over here, she, radiallahu anha, she saw that there was a need to use it, to kind of shock him and to get him out of that. Yes.
And that water was from Zamzam.
That was from Taif.
No, the water she's throwing in his face.
Well, I don't know. I don't think so, because it just says that she just threw some water on him. I think it was just regular water.
Bottled water.
Aquafina. But we know it wasn't Dasani, because you have to. That's only in a can. It's a strange concept, canned water. After that, what did she do? So over here, she threw water on him. She saw that, he was cognizant again, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes? Right, Allah is not going to abandon you. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to abandon you. And then after that, what did she do? She took him to her cousin. She took him to her first cousin, Waraqa. And she took him to Waraqa because what?
He's one of the...
Right? He was Christian, yeah?
Were they called?
He was actually Christian. He himself, he was actually Christian. There were a few people who were still on the Deen Ibrahim, but he himself was Christian. He used to transcribe the gospel. So he actually transcribed the gospel from Ibrani to Arabic. And because she was like, okay, these verses, just let me take into that. In the way to deal with the person in crisis, this is actually a great lesson for us. If a person comes to us very, just completely out of it, and a person is in a state of shock, and a person is just not listening, we have a very clear method here on how to deal with that. And part of that is what? Consoling the person. And even in all of this discussion, does she ever even though she sees him to be truthful, does she ever say like, no, everything you saw was true? Right? She doesn't do that. Which I also found very interesting, even though she found him to be, she says herself, like, you're truthful, and you keep your family ties, and like, you take care of your guests. You know what I mean? Like, she says all those things to him. But she never says to him like, no, everything you saw was right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yes, no, don't worry, man. Like, if you said you saw it, you definitely saw it. Who do we find that kind of response from? From Abu Bakr. When the Prophet ﷺ performed the Isra wal Miraj, the Quraysh, they took advantage of that moment. They went to Abu Bakr, they're like, hey, do you know what your friend is saying? Do you know what he's claiming? And he's like, did he say it? They're like, yeah, but don't you want to hear what he said? He's like, did he say it? And they're like, come on, like, just just listen to what he said. He said, okay, come, what? He was like, oh, he traveled to Beit al-Maqdis at night, and then he went through the 7 heavens, and this and that. He was like, man, I believe in Allah, who's greater than any of these things and capable of doing anything. He's like, this is small. I mean, and that's why Abu Bakr was who he was. Not saying that Khadija radiallahu anha's response was wrong in any way, shape, or form, but I think when somebody comes to us and we feel that they might be seeing things, or they might have hallucinated, or they might be in shock, we should never reinforce what it is that they're telling us. Right? I think that's important. It's like, if someone says like, man, do you hear that radio? Like, no, we don't feed that, right? That's something that's really important. But what we do, what did she do? She took him to someone who she felt would help and give him insight. Because by taking him to Waraqah, and had this been anyone other than the Prophet ﷺ, and someone came and they claimed this, and she goes to Waraqah, the moment that person shares that, man, this is what I saw, what would Waraqah would have been able to do? Had it been other than the Prophet ﷺ? Huh? Right, he would shut it down. He'd be like, no, like, you're just hallucinating. You didn't see anything. So the fact that she took him to someone, it's important for us as well. Sometimes we feel like we can solve the problem, right? When somebody comes to me or somebody comes to us and they're like, man, I have this issue, all of a sudden we get into problem solving mode. Like, okay, what can I do? Khadija radiallahu anha. Look at the maturity. Like, this is, I find it really amazing. Look at the maturity of this woman, radiallahu anha, alayha salam. She's like, okay, I know I can't do anything about this, but let me take him to someone who can. Being a gateway is very important for us as Muslims, right? If somebody comes to me with car problems, should I start working on his car? No, right. If you don't hold me accountable, no problem, right? Or someone comes with knee pain, or somebody comes with family problems, all of a sudden we feel like we can be counselors. All of a sudden we feel like we can be therapists. All of a sudden we feel like we can be muftis. It's like, man, I did this during prayer. Oh yeah, you just need to do this, like, no knowledge base, right? It's very important for us to take people to people who can help. That's my job as a Muslim. And is it possible sometimes I can't help that person directly? Yeah, absolutely, right? And that's a non-issue. Like, so if I work somewhere and somebody wants to get a job, I can be a referral for that person. I might be able to help them get that job. And that's fine, right? I'm not going to send them somewhere else for that. But we have to know what our space is. We need to know what our role is. And I think Khadija radiallahu anha, she modeled that very well. And he, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, mentioning that to us and sharing the story with us is for a reason. To tell us, like, even in such states, it's important to seek help. Even in such states, it's important to seek support. And even in such states, like, being around good people, right? The effect that has. And had it been anyone other than Khadija, had he sallallahu alaihi wasallam ran into somebody evil or ran into somebody bad, would they have given that kind of console or support? Never. So I think this is a huge lesson for us on how to be good friends, how to be good gateways, how to be good spouses, how to learn to interact with each other, how not to dismiss one another regardless of how wild a story might appear, and how to engage with one another. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu ala khayri khalqin, Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any questions? Yes.
one quick question was, Khadija radiallahu anha, she doesn't make shahada until after this point.
Probably after Mudaththir.